To start. All right, well, let's call our meeting to order. We have all of our board members. Oh, there's Andrew. We'll wait, Andrew. Thanks for being here. Guess it's not cross-country season, huh? Well, before we officially get the meeting underway, I'm glad Andrew is here because we've got a little bit of a ceremonial presentation to make. This is not to be confused with anything. This is not like a push him out the door or a goodbye or anything of that nature. But the last few years, the high school has been doing an Adopt a Senior event. And this year, we were, as a board, fortunate to be able to adopt our student ex officio. So we've got a little something for you. These are all small gifts from the board members, and we want to wish you the best of luck in your college search and decision and ultimate choice for going. We know you're going to do great things, and we're certainly looking forward to your continuing great input to our deliberations here at the high school. So without further delay, we've got a little something for you.
Do I need a cart? Do I need a cart?
Actually, Kevin, you probably should.
Anybody else that would like to as well? This is he's our board member, so let's rally around.
And then I'll read your little bio. You would have dressed up?
Yeah, maybe.
Great work. Now, before you sit down, how would you like to lead us in the pledge to the flag, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our April board meeting. We are going to start this evening with our annual presentation of the valedictorian and salutatorian for the graduating class. In this case, of course, 2026. I'll turn it over to Mr. Oliver.
Hello. Is this thing on? Yeah, okay. Good evening, members of the school board. As you all know, one of my favorite events of the year is to present the valedictorian and salutatorian of the class to the board. This year is no exception. We have two great kids I'll be introducing to you tonight. And I was saying to Paul a little bit before the meeting, I can't believe we're already here in this time in the school year, because when I start doing this, it means everything else goes pretty quickly from here on out through the end of the year. So without further ado, Miss Sadie Fent, would you come on and stand up here next to me? I'd like to introduce to the school board Miss Sadie Fent, the salutatorian of the class of 2026. Massena Central High School is thrilled to announce the salutatorian of the class of 2026, Sadie P. Fent. She's an outstanding, Sadie's outstanding academic performance is a result of her relentless pursuit of excellence and her passion for learning. Sadie is a full diploma candidate in our IB program and will graduate with an advanced Regents diploma with honors and mastery in both math and science and an overall GPA of 100.85. She's well-rounded and community-minded. She is an athlete, a scholar, an advocate, a leader, a musician, an environmentalist, and so much more. During her time at Massena Central, Sadie has been a founding member of our On the Men Club. She is president of the National Honor Society, a Link crew leader, captain of the rifle team, a peer tutor, a member of the French National Honor Society, Mohawk Club, French Club, and track team, just to name a few. Her leadership and dedication are best exemplified by her role in organizing this year's Native American Day celebrations, through which she was able to share her culture in a way that was both inspiring and admirable. Outside of school, Sadie is equally accomplished and involved. This year, she earned the designation of Eagle Scout. This achievement took several years of mastering various skills, and in true Sadie fashion, she completed double the amount of work that was required. She raised funds and built several bird, bat, wood duck, and pollinator boxes, all of which she donated to the Nicandry Nature Center. Sadie plans to study environmental science after high school, pursuing her love of nature and her desire to be a steward of the land. She has been accepted, let me see, Brown, McGill, Tufts, right? I'm sure there's more, but those are the three she's sort of between at the moment. She hasn't quite settled on where she's going to college. She was also the recipient of 2 different research grants for environmental studies. We are totally confident that we will continue to hear about Sadie and her accomplishments for a long time. Once again, I'm pleased to introduce Sadie as our salutatorian of the class of 2026. Congratulations, Sadie. Sadie is joined tonight, and if you guys don't mind, I'll have you do a picture. So if you want to get in the picture, come on down front. She'll be joined up front with her mom, Carrie, and Dak Zaza. She'll be joined by her dad, Bill Fent, and his wife, Laura Fent, and her grandparents, which I had to ask because they look super young, Debbie and Brent Fent as well. So if you wouldn't mind coming up to the front of the stage, guys. Go ahead. She'll be there for a master's degree next year. Why don't we? All right, Zach, your turn. At this point, I'll wait for people to get back to their seats. I was a little overzealous, I apologize. At this time, I'd like to introduce the valedictorian of the class of 2026, Mr. Zachary Johnson. It is with great pride that Massena Central High School announces the valedictorian for the class of 2026, Zachary J. Johnson. Since joining our community, Zachary has steadily risen as the academic leader in his class. Throughout high school, he has chosen to take our most demanding courses. His intellect and retention of knowledge have earned him a near-perfect academic record, and he will graduate with a GPA of 100.18, having earned the Advanced Regents Diploma with honors and mastery in both math and science. While it's easy to recognize Zachary's brilliance, which he is, what is often overlooked is how compassionate, generous, and supportive he is. Zachary has been acknowledged by many of those around him as someone who offers to help unprompted, avoids boasting, and is genuinely committed to lifting those around him. He is the very best example of what we wish a Raider to be. Zachary has become a vital part of the MCHS community. He's a long-standing member of the jazz, concert, and pep bands. He's a three-sport athlete, and he competes in our varsity cross-country, indoor, and outdoor track and field teams. And this year is the team's math specialist, and we're pretty proud of this one. Zach helped lead our Whiz Quiz team to its first state final appearance in the history of Massena Central High School. He is also a link crew leader, welcoming our 9th grade class to the high school. Zach is a member of the National Honor Society, Spanish National Honor Society, and was recommended as a National Merit Scholar Commended Student. After graduating from Massena Central High School, Zachary plans to attend a 4-year university to study engineering. At the moment, he's between Rochester Institute of Technology and the University of Buffalo, and I suspect he'll make a decision soon. But wherever he ends up, we're confident that he will, because of his character and dedication to excellence, he will continue to make us proud. We want to congratulate you, Zachary, on this achievement. And we commend your dedication and wish you every success in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, the valedictorian of the class of 26, Zachary Johnson. Zachary, why don't you go on up front, and he'll be joined by his mom, Kelly, and his dad, James, for a picture.
Well, thank you to our valedictorian, salutatorian, their families, and to you, Mr. Oliver, for the presentation. We appreciate that. Next on the agenda is we have a required public hearing on policy number 7310, Student Code of Conduct, and invite Mr. Burke to lead things off there.
So Policy 7310 was reviewed by the Policy Committee, and there are two notable changes as we go into the public hearing on this. The first change is in relation to the new law that's in effect this year on the student use of personal technology, which can be found on page 11. And again, that is to update that so it matches the requirements under law. And the other change is on page 15, the removal of safety protocols during the coronavirus pandemic. Fortunately, we are beyond that, and we can remove that. No other changes were made. Any questions or concerns?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Next, we'll open things up to communications from the public and the press. Is there anyone here who would like to make a statement before the board? I do have just a very brief statement of requirements for our public comment session. If you would please state your name and the subject that you wish to address. We would ask that all of your comments be directed to the board as a group and not to individual members of the board. That your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and that you not disclose names of school personnel or particularly students in your comments.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Blair Sini. 2 years ago, I made a life-altering decision. I packed up every piece of my life in Texas, my home, my belongings, and the proximity to my family to move over 1,800 miles away here to Massena Central. I didn't come here as a novice. I brought with me 11-year career in special education. In those years, I had built a reputation for excellence. I had never once received a disciplinary note, never faced a memorandum of counsel, and never had a single negative mark on my record. My career was defined by stability and a deep commitment to my students. I came to Massena because I wanted to be a part of the heart of a small community. I wanted to be the kind of teacher who knows their students' names, their families, and their struggles. For a while, I believed that I had found that here. My performance reviews were exemplary. My relationships with parents were built on trust, and I was even honored to be in discussions about future administrative roles. I felt at that time that I was exactly where I was intended to be. But then, in just a few short months, everything changed under the new Director of Special Services. The Director of Special Services came gunning for me, no pun intended. And that 12-year legacy of exemplary service was systematically dismantled. Within a window of only 3 months, I received 3 memorandums of counsel. I went from being a celebrated educator and a candidate for leadership to be told to find employment elsewhere. It is a profound and jarring disconnect to be the exact same teacher who was recruited for my expertise, only to be made to feel like a failure in a matter of weeks. I am still the person who builds bridges with the most challenging of students, the ones a lot of other educators give up on. Yet tonight I stand here feeling as though those bridges have been burned behind me, not by my students or their parents, but by the administration. I left my entire support system in Texas because I believed in the promise of this district. To have that career destroyed so quickly after over a decade of spotless service has been devastating. I don't know what I want here tonight. Maybe I'm just here for closure. I am asking this board to look closely at the circumstances of my departure and the timeline of events that led to it. Consider the impact these administrative decisions have on the dedicated professionals you work so hard to recruit. We give our lives and our hearts to the children of this community, and we deserve the same respect, fairness, and due process that we provide to our students every single day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else here that would like to make a statement before the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to information and reports, and we'll start with Mr. Andrew David's student ex officio report.
So tonight we have a bit of a more packed presentation with two main topics I want to talk about: the per diem at Massena, and then I promised that I would look into the electric buses versus what we have now. So starting off with the per diem, it is a district-decided policy, and when I was in Washington, D.C., a major city, we were given 10 for breakfast, 15 for lunch, and 20 for dinner, for a total of $45 in a day. The GSA, the main and supposedly most restrictive government body, provides rates on the next slide of what is recommended per district or per city. At Massena, towards the bottom, it is recommended that the per diem is $63 per day. In somewhere like New York City, it's $87, with the maximum being about $90. for food. 63. That's $18 more than what we get for Massena. And I went to Washington, D.C. And this also includes, on the next slide, it says that it's supposed to include both tax and tip. But ours does not. It makes sense that that the school requires receipts, and it is required. But the way the school does it, I feel, is unfair to students. And if a student of low-income status were to travel on a trip like this, I believe it would be difficult for them and their families to justify sending them on this trip that I went on. We went to a LEAD conference, and it was one of my favorite school trips I have ever been on. The speakers were phenomenal. The leadership building meetings were, it was worth every moment that I spent there. But it did cost me. Every meal was not covered. I always had to pay probably 50% out of pocket. And a lot of places did not allow us, a group of 6 people, not very large, 2 adults, 4 kids, but we could not split the bill at a lot of places. They only allow you to split it usually 4 or 5 ways. It's also mentioned that that's the rate per day, not mentioning anything about taking away that allowance if a meal is provided for, as Massena does it. And then the first and last day of travel are 75%. So you only get that much of the days. Yeah, so, and then the other way that I've had experience with is traveling with NC STEP to Albany. They gave me a little over $200 for 2.5 days. And it was given upfront in the form of a check to the students. So none of the students had to pay out of pocket or had to have the money beforehand to pay to get them food and then bring the receipts back. It was both less hassle and a more enjoyable experience, as the students didn't have to worry about their budget or their how they were going to pay for that food. Considering that it's a different organization under the tribal government, and they have a very different set of rules that they follow. But I think there are certain things to take away from that, and I think one of the things is that $45 a day is not enough, especially for a major city. Before I move on, is there any questions?
Andrew, I want to thank you for bringing this point up. And do you happen to have the policy number off the top of your head that you found?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I don't know the specific number.
We'll look I'll look it up. But you're right, and I apologize that you had to pay that, because the federal per diem is $92 in Washington, D.C. So I apologize, there may be some oversight in that policy, but as the policy committee chair, I'll make sure that that gets reviewed.
Yeah. Thank you.
And it was discussed in another policy, but I might have had some oversight that it didn't apply to students versus our staff. So we'll take a second look at that and have a discussion.
Yeah, I understand that the LEAD conference was very special, and that it was very selective. Only 4 students went, only the leadership of the National Honor Society, and this is also very rare. I don't think I've ever seen students travel on the school per diem. But as I said, NC STEP does do their own per diem when they travel with kids for the trips to, say, Albany or any school trips that they take. But
No comment from, or no question from me, but a comment. I have found that our per diem rates, first of all, I think for board members attending, say, NISBA convention, I think the per diems are a little bit higher, but still not adequate for New York City, which is where we've been the last 2 years. On the other side of that coin, I'm not a student. I can certainly, cover what isn't covered by the per diem, and I'm happy to do it. My housing is covered, my transportation is covered. So I think it's a bit different when you're asking students to go on these experiences and not covering their legitimate expenses. So it's great information that you're bringing to us.
And quite honestly, Andrew, it was brought up, I'm going to say by Mr. Beckstead, I hope I'm not putting words into your mouth, but at one point you did mention that you thought the rates even for board members when we traveled was not very high. So it did come into a little bit of discussion, but didn't go any further. So we feel the pinch as well, a little bit. Not that that makes it right, but true, as Mr. Haggis said, it is probably more difficult for students. So it's good that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, the hardest thing, I think, was receipts, and the way we ended up submitting it, I don't think we got any back for it, but we just took the large receipt and said this part was this person's, this part was this person's, this part was this person's. But I don't believe that worked.
I'm not sure that we can do away with the requirement for receipts.
I believe that's true.
But I think an increase in the per diem is something, as Mr. Monroe said, can certainly be looked at.
Yep. Well, moving on to electric versus diesel buses. So I did a little bit of research into the advantages and disadvantages of both and found that there are nuances and there are things that we probably haven't considered. The biggest one being that even the longest of runs, electric buses can probably still handle. Electric buses can have up to 250-mile ranges. You account for cold weather and the heating using the electric for heating system, that's about 30% less. Still, over 100, you're getting closer to the what might be considered emergency distance, but it would still reach that those long runs out to the territories and such. The other consideration, though, is that they're very expensive. Often 2, sometimes 3 times the price for an electric bus. But the current build process and the regulations for buses is not quite there yet. So a lot of them have been shown to be either fragile or poorly manufactured, and often spend a lot of times just in a garage, not on the roads doing runs, in storage. And that storage actually takes up a lot more space than a diesel bus, often needing 10 to 12 feet between each bus, whereas diesel buses can be stacked right up next to each other. I did find that diesel buses have more things that can fail, but the electric buses are just less tested and less understood. So mechanics would need different certifications, as well as firefighters, to be able to handle those high-powered batteries, especially if there is a leakage or a break in any part. Electric buses can be heavier, which can also decrease the capacity that they're allowed to carry with the current bus driver licenses, but it doesn't usually make too large of a difference. The other thing is that electric buses are more efficient in some ways, but not others. You may have heard terms like regenerative braking, or that electric vehicles have a lot of torque compared to gas. Diesel also has a lot of torque. Electric is just a little more efficient. And on higher speeds, diesel is still more efficient than electric. It's just getting up to those speeds where electric is superior. So on runs where you have lots of stops, say in town, or where there's lots of hills or stop signs, those runs where you have to slow down or come to a complete stop quite often is where electric buses really shine, often regenerating up to 20%-ish of the battery that was lost. The diesel buses, on the other hand, have the advantage of being able to store so much fuel, and because fuel is the gold standard of energy density, they're able to travel so much further and use supply energy to so many more things that it becomes more practical and more well understood for today's world. Another problem is that a lot of these bus manufacturers are either declaring bankruptcy or not following through. This leaves some electric buses or schools that have purchased electric buses with no one to purchase replacement parts or to service the buses or to contact when the buses have problems, because they are new and they will have problems. But you may wonder, like, there are all these drawbacks to the buses. Like, we don't even have the infrastructure to support a full fleet of buses. We can't store them inside. We don't have the charging capacity at our bus garage to charge more than, I'd say, 2 or 3. And there are costs beyond that in repairs and more certifications for our mechanics. But electric buses are the future, and they will forever be the direction that we are most likely moving towards. And they are safer, as well as a more enjoyable ride for bus drivers and students, being both smoother, quieter, and not producing fumes that students would have to walk through getting on and off the bus. On the other hand, diesel buses do all of the opposite things. They are being phased out and eventually will not be able to be used. So it's really a question of when you want to hop on the bandwagon. New York State will mandate it eventually. It will probably not be for us for a long time due to extensions and the fact that electric buses were not designed for rural settings. They were created with the idea of, you're in a city, regenerative braking is going to be the largest factor that people want, and in those cities there's so many other factors that contribute to emissions that it's important. Every step is important to mitigate global warming, as you've seen with this prolonged winter from climate change. This is not normal. This is caused by climate change. Any questions?
So after your extensive research on this, what is your recommendation to the board?
I say hold off as of right now. We are still purchasing diesel vehicles, and New York State is trying to mandate them, but it is not yet, correct? Yeah. But I think we should start considering and trying to budget for maybe 1 or 2 in the future, as they will be advantageous in these short runs through the city or through the town. And I think the sooner you prepare your mechanics and the fire department and your buildings for electric buses, the better.
So I don't speak for the whole board, but from my perspective, it seems as though we're gambling on a new, untried technology where our efficiencies and purposes are all put at risk to try a new shiny object.
Yeah.
At the behest of politicians that want to compete with California to see who can make themselves feel better. I don't know if I agree with you on global warming. I would encourage you to keep studying it. I think if you go back and do study and go farther back into the Earth's history, you'll see it was warmer. And other climates were much different. Than we are actually at the coldest point that we've been at in a long time. But keep digging into it. There's lots of information out there. And I think your presentation is tremendous for the efforts that you put into it, to dig into it on your own voluntarily, and I appreciate it.
As my mom is a bio teacher, I can speak on the fact that this is not the coldest ever, and it's also the hottest in history. If you find a graph of global temperatures over millennia, it's a straight line until about 1970, where it has increased exponentially every year.
The information's controlled.
I'm just curious, how do you know that? Like, who was measuring global temperature during the Roman Empire?
So when you take an ice core out of the Arctic,
Yep, they take them out of the ocean, and the ocean sediments and the ice cores out of the glaciers.
in the Arctic you can measure different frequencies of chemicals
oxygen
as well as
isotopes.
concentrations, and you can tell how long ago it was and by how thick the ice is, basically how cold it was. Yeah.
Can I just ask one question, Mr. Burke? We've often talked about the expense with the infrastructure and the bus and the projected future maintenance on these vehicles. One thing that I was looking at in a slide when he mentioned high-risk level 4 or level 4 electrical, is that going to increase our insurance costs as well for workers' compensation as well as other things, given the risk and liability of working?
We haven't gotten that far to even talk about the insurance for the carrier, frankly.
Okay. I don't mean to throw one more expense research on your plate, but it's just one of those things that if you get the overall picture, what are we really looking at when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I think one of the big concerns when we first started hearing about the electric bus mandate was, would our lifts be able to accommodate the extra weight? And they're within range for the newer lifts. Some of the older lifts, perhaps not. But I think, in our garage, we would be okay with our 3. Again, the insurance question, that is, I'm not sure that we'd see a major increase on the actual insurance of the buses, but like Andrew pointed out, and the advice, it all depends which day of the week you're asking and who you're asking. So in terms of bus storage, originally we were told park those things inside so that they stay warm, especially in the winter months. And then because of that thermal runaway, as Andrew pointed out, then they were telling us keep them outdoors, keep them at least 6 feet apart. And as Andrew pointed out, now they're talking up to 12 feet. And if we start putting so again, there's some extra cost with doing things like that, and we're really not sure what all of that means yet. Still a lot of unknowns. And some schools are reporting okay things, and other schools, especially some of the ones more local to us, are not reporting that. I think Andrew has some really strong advice here in terms of just hold on tight for a little bit, and let's see where the technology goes, and let's see exactly where the mandate is. And in his last slide, he talks as well about that. the governor continues to call for some extension to the climate law, and we're not quite sure where that's all going to end up in this budget process. We're only 20 days late, so, just, again, hold tight. We'll hopefully see some type of action there. And, and I will give Andrew a lot of credit. I think we've talked about electric vehicles at least for our last 2, maybe 3 meetings. And no offense to Mr. LeBlanc, but he did talk me out of a Tesla and talked me into a Lucid. So my wife will have lots of conversations with Andrew in the future about that expense. But
Can I ask a question also, Mr. Burke? Has Massena Electric been involved in any of the discussion, and even DPW, with the look at the condition of our roads now and our aging bridges? I mean, are there people in the village community being informed about this?
yeah, Mr. McMahon and I, we talked, and again, we're still trying to figure out, because again, the technology is changing in terms of the battery packs for the buses. What do we actually need? How much would it be? We really haven't gotten beyond the conversation about when to charge the buses. And, with information that we had back in the fall, our conversation really centered around the idea of having the buses on timers so that they begin to be charged sometime around the 10 o'clock hour. That would give us 8 hours, which would, in theory, bring them back up to full. And that would somehow, and I don't understand exactly how that works with Massena Electric, but that's a downtime for electricity use, and that would actually, he felt, would be the most beneficial time, or the least impactful, I should say.
And they feel they can handle the extra load?
I'm not sure about that. We did talk a lot about transformers and how to get that power to the garage. We don't have easy access to that amount of power right now. At one time, and I don't think he was necessarily joking, but we talked about it might be cheaper to relocate our buses closer to a substation than to try to get the power to our transportation facility. And there might be some truth to that. It's not going to be inexpensive for new lines, new transformers, that type of thing.
And I reckon this would probably come at a cost to the educational purpose of the school, correct? And the students, and the money we have to provide to students?
Right. So right now, if you look at it over the period of the 5-year bond that the state puts out in terms of transportation, we're looking at, in a few minutes, we'll talk in the budget about our buses. They're around $175,000 per bus. At the end of the day, relatively, we get about 90% of that back in state aid, so that bus costs $17,000, $17,500. We start doubling that cost. Yeah, it's not inconsequential for each bus. And one of the other things that I think we also really have to look at too is when we look at the cost, and this is what actually prevented me from buying an electric vehicle just a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be a third vehicle. But when I started looking at the price of the ownership, which was good, as Andrew pointed out, but the cost of actually fueling up with electricity really outweighed the cost for me to pick up a lease and pick up insurance. It just didn't make economic sense at this point. So I think those are things that we really have to do. This school district in the Finger Lakes that did a great study is showing, a cost factor per mile of 3 to 4 times per mile. And again, but that's with today's technology. And I think, as Andrew said, if we wait and see where that technology goes, I think we can even say the same thing about Tesla vehicles. When they first came out, they were outrageously expensive. And now you can pick one up for about the same cost as a conventional vehicle. If this is the way of the future, the market's going to drive this and the price will start coming down, the technology will get better, and it may make sense for us down the road. I guess the ultimate question is, from my other hat, will you be comfortable with an ambulance getting called to your house that's an electric ambulance or an electric fire truck at this point? So if your answer to that is no, then maybe we should also be thinking about that as it relates to school buses transporting our most precious cargo.
Yep.
On that last point, I would say yes, just because that electric vehicles are often faster, especially accelerating it from low speeds. And then on the other thing, I would recommend that, not buying an electric vehicle, but so much as either budgeting for it or looking into getting the certifications for everyone involved.
Right. Yeah, right now our transportation director and I, we've done a number of trainings on electric vehicles and on electric buses from the first responder side, which is good because that's also helping us from the operational side to know exactly how they're constructed. It won't be this summer, but I would imagine in another summer or two, at least a couple of us will probably go to the IC factory. I believe it's in Kentucky, which is the international factory, and just see how these are really put together, the electric buses. It's really nice to know how that is built from the ground up and see where all the components really are.
Anyone else have questions for Andrew? Okay, let's move on to our Facilities Committee report. Robert?
Good evening. The Facilities Committee met on Monday, March 30th at the CAB. The board was present with our guest, Jenny Kurtz from Appel Osborne, the designer for the track and field, Megan from King & King, and Peter from GYMO. We talked about the capital project design of the track and field, and one of the important questions was that we debated is, are we going to put a drain around the track, between the track and the field? And we decided not to. We don't have one now, and we're going to gamble and not put one on a new project. With Megan, we talked about increasing the space of the gym with some different strategies. And we talked about the rooftop unit on the pool that will be heavier than expected, so we'll have to either reinforce the roof or put that down on the floor. We decided to put it down on the ground, but that would eliminate the windows that we planned on putting on the pool. We talked about phase one, that's going to be from June 27 to September 28. With GYMO, Peter explained how he's planning the different phases and looking at priorities with the different schools. He's looking at costs and looked at presented a lot of RFI to get an estimated cost of the project. We also talked about the capital outlay for 2027. We're preparing to install a window at the high school entrance, and we're going to be doing an abatement on the junior high. And we talked about losing the service of the village for the trash collection. So we'll have to go with the private sector, which is over $100,000. Or we also consider doing it ourselves, but we wouldn't save much and we would take a lot of risks. So that's about it of what we talked. And the next meeting will be Wednesday, April 29th, next week. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Robert? Mr. Monroe, anything from the Policy Committee?
Real quick, yeah, we did have a Policy Committee meeting last Tuesday. At the recommendation by Mr. Burke, we had some new information, and if you remember, we had a policy 7131 non-resident students that was updated just a few months ago. There was some information that we wanted to review and discuss on this policy. You will not see it on the consent agenda for approval because we are still actively answering questions and updating information on that, but that will most likely be in future Policy Committee updates. But that was the only thing reviewed. Otherwise, we are all caught up on all policy review for the year.
Okay. Any questions for Zach? Okay, we'll move on to my report, which will hopefully be brief here. We are being asked to vote on the BOCES administrative budget this evening. The budget booklet and explanation of the administrative budget is linked to your agenda. The admin budget is the only part of the overall BOCES budget that we vote upon, and all districts in our BOCES are meeting tonight to do the same thing. The the total amount is a touch over $10 million, and our portion is determined by student enrollment, essentially the size of our district. Over 3/4 of the $10 million total for the BOCES administrative budget is made up of BOCES retiree health insurance payments. That's the vast majority of that. The other BOCES-related item that we're going to be voting on this evening are the candidates for the BOCES board. They are all running unopposed for 3-year terms, and they are Todd Bates from Gouverneur, Michael Miller from Waddington, and Kevin Wells from Morristown. We have a proposed 2026-27 board meeting schedule to decide on tonight as well, and the draft is attached to your agenda. Probably the biggest change, which I think is a real good one, is the date for the reorganizational meeting. That's proposed to be July 1st. So there would be essentially no interim period in between the end of the old school fiscal year to the beginning of the new school fiscal year. It'd be the very next day. So I think that's a net positive. It's certainly a lot earlier than we've typically had our reorganizational meeting. And the last item that I have is the determination of ballot order for the trustee election on May 19th, our budget vote day. Ashley has the names of our candidates. There are 3 of them, not in a hat, but in a little cup. And if, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind just drawing names for us, we'll determine the order that the trustee candidates are on the ballot.
How many positions open?
Sorry?
Is there 2 positions?
There are 2 positions. 2 positions, 3 candidates.
Correct. Perfect. So just one at a time, and we'll determine the order. So, okay. So the first one is Patricia Murphy. Go ahead. Second is Joyce Giroux. Pick the third one just so it shows, please. Thank you. And our third is Scott Goodfellow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. And that is all I have for my report this evening.
Now, was that a sentencing or something to congratulate for?
Oh, it's certainly a congratulatory thing. Anyone who has the desire to run for the board needs to be congratulated, for sure.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to reports from administration. We'll turn it over to Mr. Burke again.
Okay, thank you. So running through our budget, and again, keeping in mind that there are still some unknowns, namely related to the late state budget, but we're going to get through that. The proposed budget for 2026-27, it stands at $78,015,406. That is an increase of $3.6 million or 4.9%. The most important part, I think, especially for our taxpayers, is that that does carry a continued 0% tax levy increase. So again, we are going to be making do with the local tax dollars as they are. Just to review, we set the property tax cap a few weeks ago. It is never really truly a 2% flat tax cap for Massena, given some of our debt service monies. Our tax cap is actually 4.61%. However, again, we will be going out with a 0% increase. So we could ask for up to 4.61 from the voters without a supermajority, but again, we will be going out with 0. On our next slide, our projected revenues and our projected expenses. Again, our taxes staying consistent year over year. We are looking at state and federal aid of $53 million, almost $53.1 million, and appropriating $4.8 million of our fund balance. I did want to just talk about that real quickly. When we start talking about appropriating that kind of fund balance, it should scare all of us because that's not sustainable over the long haul. This year, under our current budget, we appropriated $2.9 million. And at the end of the school year, we anticipate that we will actually add just shy of $4 million in unrestricted fund balance. So where we thought we would use almost 3, we're actually adding almost 4. So again, we're getting closer though, closer than I'd like to be. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with our expense side now and going into the future. And then we also have below that our budgeted expenses, salaries. We are a human service industry, and when you look at our salaries, our employee benefits. That's making up almost $55 million of our total budget. Then we also have the next big ticket item, which is our BOCES expenses of $11.8 million. And then our other expenses, supplies, equipment, textbooks, that type of information there. Any questions so far?
Yes. Could you just review what you said about use of the appropriated fund balance?
Sure. So this year, under our current budget, we appropriated 2.9,
Right.
and we're not using it. In fact, we have enough money left over from our state aid, and so basically our revenue outpaced our expenses. It's a great
Okay.
spot to be in. In fact, I think with Mallory, when you look at later on in the board meeting, the tax report card, you'll see that our unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of the overall budget is actually growing. Again, not a bad thing to happen. But again, we're starting to see, I can see next year where, and this has to be full disclosure, I can see where we will not be adding in all likelihood to our fund balance. We may actually use some of that appropriated $4.8 million. And that's going to be our goal, is to use as little or none of that as we possibly can.
So you said this is an increase in spending?
Yes.
Do you think that could be partly in part due to the switch to AP and costs associated with buying new materials for that?
No, not really, because we're not adding personnel, and personnel is really the biggest expense of running a school. The switch from IB to AP will have a little extra expense when as it relates to training teachers with AP courses, but we also had similar expenses with IB. So I think I can't say it's going to be dollar for dollar, but on a $78 million budget, I don't think we're probably looking at more than maybe 10,000 at most. I don't think, but, and some of those things too, Andrew, we would be using, like if we needed new textbooks, we'd use the textbook money. So that cost is already taken care of by the state.
Do we have a projection of how long our fund balance can run? So we have good news for this year in terms of the fund balance, and then going into next year, and then maybe 2 or 3 years if state aid runs remain the same, about 2%, or if they happen to decrease, what does that fund balance look like for us long term?
So we've been riding the reinstatement of the gap monies, okay? We've gotten that back and then some.
And COVID.
And COVID, okay? So what I can see happening is our population at Massena is now starting to decline. We've been not at that hold harmless because our population was consistent and our census was consistent, so our state aid growth was pretty good. Last year we received, I'd say, quite a pleasant surprise with how much money we received in foundation aid. I knew that it was going to drop this year. I wasn't quite convinced that it was going to drop as far as it did. Under the original governor's proposal, we were standing at 1.7% in foundation aid growth. After our numbers were updated, which happens sometime in February each year, our number dropped down because of our student population, dropped down to 1.3%. And that's where we stand. And so one of the things that we're also seeing is the governor had put out the year prior some really low numbers for the floor of what the minimum expectation would be. And the legislature and the governor came to an agreement last year at 2%. The governor this year put out 1% again. Both houses of the legislature are fighting for 2%. I have a feeling that's probably where we're going to end up, is at 2%. So, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. I think we're going to see our foundation aid go up, but in the long term, will the state of New York be able to sustain 2% foundation aid growth each year? I think that's a major question mark. It depends everything really depends on how Wall Street does in New York, and how many companies stay on Wall Street in New York, and that's certainly a topic of conversation as well. Better left to the politicians. So the honest answer on this one, Zach, is we need to be prepared for tomorrow. and we've got to start doing this today. And under Mr. Peretta and the Finance Committee, we're going to be meeting really monthly, not just budget cycle time, because we need to start doing these long-term projections. Folks, times are going to get tough. There's just no way, shape, or form around it. One of the things that we talked about at our BOCES meeting back last August with our new DS, it was really a beg from some of us, is to be bold. Think about the future. How can we capitalize on what we have? How can we maximize? And that's exactly, I think, what we as a board and as a school district here have to do on our local level, is be bold. And I'm going to be talking to you folks in the next couple of months through the Finance Committee about some bold things I think that we should at least talk about. These are not going to be fun conversations, but they're adult conversations that we have to have. And one of the challenges I put out, a couple of us superintendents who are getting a little bit lighter in the hair or grayer, is we have to lead. And I think Massena, we also have to lead. We're probably the one district up here that is financially in a good spot with our reserves and with our fund balance. We need to be a leader in this conversation going forward, and we need to be willing to have hard conversations. One of the board goals that you've established this year, it's really a 2-year goal, is to talk about and to explore the idea of realigning our elementary schools from community school geographical models to one that's based on grade levels. And when we start looking at some of the class numbers over the next few months, you're going to be able to see that there may be some economic savings there. And not just the educational efficiencies that we think we can gain. But again, those are conversations that are coming. But Mr. Monroe, times are going to get tough. And I don't say that lightly. We're also riding a really positive wave right now within our healthcare consortium. Our increase this year is 6%. Our reserves are strong, far stronger than we need to be, and our fund balance is strong. But that tide is changing. We used $2 million of that last year. We anticipate we're probably going to use about $2 million of that this year. So the days of 3.5% increase like we saw last year, 6% increase this year, it's not sustainable. Some of us argued for 8%, but we also recognize the economic reality of the other counterparts in their schools. And we settled at a 6%, knowing that we were going to bring down some of our fund balance. But again, 6%, we're a couple percentage points lower than the national average on health costs. And again, that's just not sustainable for the long haul.
Is the same to be said for a 0% tax as well? So as long as I've been on this board, we've been fortunate, and I think even before me, we've been fortunate to have a 0% tax. However, I think of it in terms of, if you look at a property reassessment, when a municipality foregoes a property reassessment and goes longer than they should, and then it gets all piled in at once. We saw this in surrounding communities recently, where it really gave sticker shock to some people in the public. And so, does it make sense? And as part of the solution in looking at this, is the risk of gradual tax increase, or I should say, is it better to be looking at gradual tax increases as we project down the line for the future, instead of saying, oh, all of a sudden now we have to make hard decisions, and guess what, we're also at the tax cap as well, to get people adjusted?
I think that we have such a strong fund balance and reserves that we can modify that over the course of 3 to 5 years. But I think, one of the things I heard from Finance Committee, I don't want to put words in people's mouths on that group, but we need to avoid any property tax increase until we know that we have squeezed every penny that we can without harming kids. And that's really the goal here. So as we go through, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but every time we're going to have a vacancy, we're really exploring that. Does that vacancy need to be refilled? And are there other ways to gain efficiencies? with our staffing. Again, we know that we're a people industry. That's where all of our costs are. So we'll talk in a few minutes about how we're not replacing an administrative position next year and how that can show some savings. We're also looking at, and I might as well throw it out now, Summer Raider Academy. The numbers have been decreasing. Some on the board have been noticing that over the past few years. We also know that our Junior High Raider Academy, our numbers typically backs out at about 12 children total. And again, is that money well spent, especially when we have such other programs as, you know, the Massena Recreation Program, Town of Louisville Rec, various camps, and PAL and Horizons. There are just a lot of competing interests for fewer and fewer students. So now is the time to start making some of those expenditure adjustments. And we are looking at that within our special education department. We're going to be meeting with our families of 1211 at the elementary and about I think it might be the end of next week. And we're going to talk about some realignment. And we're going to be realigning our programs, the classrooms, based on needs of children rather than their street address. And that way we can really hone in and again, gain efficiencies and have the right staffing in those rooms. So we're going to see some decrease in staffing just through attrition. We're not necessarily talking layoffs at this point. But we've got to, we have to right size our ship, frankly. Again, our numbers are starting to drop. Not so much at the, so when we look at our census numbers right now, grade 6 through grade 12, we actually have a couple bubbles where we're around 200 students. When we get grades 5 and lower, not quite so pretty. We're under the 180, under 160. One class is around 134. And we're seeing that kind of trend with our pre-K coming in. So again, we're going to monitor these closely. We're going to make lots of recommendations to the board about whether or not we should fill certain positions or leave them vacant.
So if you look farther out at the diminished number of students, then I don't know that we can totally put a number to it or run it against the state aid formula, but we can assume that eventually our aid will be going down. So this year, I think at a certain point they'll take it away outside of politics. You know, it would decrease because our enrollment goes down and the aid formula runs based on our enrollment. And we haven't been at that point as long as I've been here, but at a certain point you've got to resize yourself based on what you are and what you have available, just like anyone does in their home. You got to scale what you're spending on. And I think Ron will get to it. I want to say we're estimating we might get upwards of $600,000 increase this year.
Yeah, overall total.
Yeah, and our expenses, if you look into the budget and look at what our contractual raises are and all that, it won't even cover those things. So if you look at taxing, when we have as much money in our reserves as we do, you're not generating that much money. You mean if a 5% tax increase, it's what do we get, 145,000 per 1%?
I think it's, yeah, a little over
in that
160
neighborhood
now. But.
Yeah, so you're not gaining massive money, and you've got to go to the well to the community to get it. If you look at what we're doing, we're too big for the number of kids we've got. We've got to change what we're providing and how we're providing it. So the smart thing and the easy way is attrition. It's not paying less, but it's the least painful option. Mm-hmm. And we are looking down the road, and it's very difficult when you don't know. We're 20 days out from knowing what we should be getting. It's an annual thing. Mm-hmm. You're guessing all the way, but I would prefer that we guess and try to prepare for the worst, because then we can head things off and it keeps us right-minded towards what's coming. If we get a windfall, great, but I don't think it's coming. Maybe, you know. Pat Brady told me for years he used to always put up a slide about the gap elimination money. And we had $9 million that the state owed us from what the foundation aid said we were supposed to get. And they took away when they were in a bad position. So I think the year that I told him, Pat, why do you keep putting that slide up there? They're not going to give us that money back. They started giving us the money back, and that's the tide that he's talking about. It was years and years and years to get that coming. in that same time, COVID happened, and you had all these grant monies from the state. So, you know, we did the smartest things we could do in those times to make the money and work to not create cliffs that we would fall off. Just so you know, I mean, it's to me, it's normal things, and a lot of other people aren't immersed in it to that degree. But we are looking as far down the road and at the worst case scenario to try to prepare ourselves for it, to make sure that we go at it the best that we can. So I hope, you know,
Yeah,
that helps.
I agree. I think the finance committee does a great job putting this budget together. I know it's not easy, you know, even with the budget delay now. So, but I feel like even before, the finance committee has been focused on figuring out what is the worst case scenario down the line. It just seems now that it becomes where the belt gets a little bit tighter, and then the conversation is, you know, what does the true financial forecast look like in 2, 3, 4 years down the line? And so the solutions that we're talking about are all really important. You know, in long term, it's good to look at the short term, a supportive, strong budget, but then also, you know, as a board, we should always be thinking about, you know, that long-term approach. What does it look like?
Zach, one of the things I think we need to be really focused on too is we had the Rockefeller Institute study on foundation aid with some recommendations of how to tweak the foundation aid formula. And we continually hear from politicians, we need to fix the formula. The devil's in the details. What does that mean, fix the formula? One of the proposals that's out there now is to increase the multiplier for English language learners. All well and good. There's also a call that has gotten absolutely no traction to increase the multiplier for students with disabilities. That's going nowhere. That's what we need, because that's where our biggest increase is. It's not with English language learners. Not that they don't have needs, but so do students with disabilities. And so I get really nervous, and I can't remember if it was Senator Steck or Assemblyman Gray at our legislative breakfast back a few weeks ago indicated, be careful about what you ask politicians to fix, because they'll fix it. We saw that with APPR. So if we need to have a very thoughtful conversation, because it is rural New York versus suburban and metro New York when it comes to these monies, and we're starting to see some of that impact. Again, all well-meaning, everyone's looking out for their best interests of their local schools and their needs. You know, and I would just caution everybody too, I think it was about 400 school districts out of the 700, 60% of the districts in New York State are right now at that hold harmless. Under the governor's proposal, a 1% increase. Under the legislative proposal, a 2% increase. That's a pretty remarkable number, and that definitely cuts across both political aisles, Republican-controlled seats and Democratic-controlled seats. So the impact is real. Okay, if we look at the state aid for Massena, this is based on the governor's proposal with the modified numbers. Again, the foundation aid showing an increase of 1.3%. Please don't get excited about too many of the other numbers here. For example, that BOCES numbers look great, a $300,000 increase, but that's because we spent that kind of money the year prior. Okay, so that's all expense aid. So if we spend more, we get more back. Let's see, similar with some of the other numbers. Transportation, again, it's great. We went up $450,000, and we're anticipating that. But again, that's also due to fuel costs, parts costs, those types of things. And also the 5th bus that we purchased this year as opposed to 4 typically. The foundation aid number is the one that you really have to hone in on. That's true, genuine state aid, not based on prior year expenses. On the next slide, again, if we go from a 1.3% to a 2% increase, when the budget is enacted, that would mean an additional revenue on foundation aid of just over $256,000. If we get 2.3%, you can add a little bit more onto that, another 100,000 or so. Again, we're not going to look, we're not going to turn that away. We'll take any extra that we get on our foundation aid. The next thing, I think, again, we asked BOCES, our leadership, our new leadership team at BOCES, to be bold, and have they ever? They have been scouring COSERs around the state, trying to figure out how they can help us to generate aid, and they have recently formed and had approval from State Ed to create a COSER, which is a cooperative service for early college access. This is not anything that we've been doing or not been doing. We've been providing college course credit for our students. We just have not been getting any state aid back on it. So that we've been incurring the expenses, but not getting money. Under Assistant Superintendent Flynn, she has done a great job along with Mr. Oliver, identifying the courses and identifying the full-time equivalent of the teachers teaching those courses. We've given an invoice to BOCES for this current school year. Next year, that bill that we've provided to BOCES should generate approximately $175,000 in aid. I do want to emphasize, though, this is just simply aid for what we're already doing. It's the exact same idea as the aid that we get back for expenses that we incur for transportation, for educating students with disabilities. Again, it's money that we've already expended, and it's the same, almost the same amount of work, other than for Mrs. Flynn and Mr. Oliver perhaps as well on that. But again, we are really working hard to go after every possible reimbursement from the state that we can obtain. So again, $175,000 back in state aid next year is a pretty remarkable number, even on our budget our size. So well done to Mrs. Flynn. Again, we talked a little bit about reductions with the eventual departure of our Director of Student Support Services. We've met and we've come up with a plan to not replace, but to rather reassign some of those duties. It's not all without cost. We will most likely be looking at some smaller costs to help accommodate that, but again, we're going to be able to handle most of that work. And we've looked at the Raider Academy, which also fell under her leadership, and we've identified 2 out of the 3 parts of Raider Academy. Again, keep in mind, Raider Academy, as Mr. Preda pointed out a few minutes ago, that was all created and funded through COVID funds. Those funds have now been dried up this is our 2nd year without that. So the decision was made not to use the general funds to continue that. We're looking at a potential savings of about $150,000 just on this page. There is another position that we are not filling. I didn't put it on here, but at the high school, we do have a science position that is being vacated. We are not filling it. However, we did leave that salary in the budget for the sole reason that we anticipate that numbers may increase, that we may see demand. So rather than having to come back to the Finance Committee next year and say, hey, we need that position back, we've left it there as a placeholder. It could very well disappear after next year, but we wanted to give ourselves time to make sure that that really was something that was sustainable for the long-term academic performance of our students. On the next page, just going through some of our major cost drivers. Health insurance at a 6% increase. That's increasing by $656,000. We've budgeted an additional almost $900,000 for special education costs. You've seen that on a regular basis where I've asked for additional paraprofessionals to support students with disabilities throughout the course of this year. Our BOCES CTE cost is anticipated to go up $139,000. That's driven by a 3-year average of our student population that we send to BOCES. And at this time, our trash collection contract is estimated to go up about $50,000. Not quite as bad as we initially thought, but still a substantial increase. Once again, I want to applaud the leadership team. Every one of them came with extraordinarily reasonable requests. Again, I've shared with the board 2 years ago when it was approaching about $3 million worth of new requests. I went into panic mode. Last year they brought it down. I think we were nearly, just slightly over $1 million, and we got that number pared down. This year, I'm not sure we even hit a $500 million in terms of new requests. So again, just a great job by them, really identifying what is absolutely necessary. At the high school, we are looking at providing in-person summer school. We talked about that previously. With our change in attendance policy, we anticipate that we may see some extra students this year not make it through their courses, so we want to make sure we give them every opportunity for success in the summer. Band and orchestra equipment and auditorium supplies really have not been part of our budget. We've been using forward spending. That's not a real great way. So for long-term sustainability, we've asked to include that in the budget so we actually have that as money that's earmarked for these two very important areas. Total cost is around $87,500. In special education, we have a 12-on-1 classroom that is currently staffed with a paraprofessional that's an aide. It technically should be a TA, and that's one thing that we'll be doing. That conversion is approximately $16,000 to go from an aide to a TA. And we are also looking at adding an occupational therapist. The occupational therapist, that's a mandate on many student IEPs, and we're just simply not able to fulfill that with our current staffing levels. So the total cost on special education here for new requests is $116,000. How to really hold Mrs. Flynn back in on these requests on the next page. We do need new science lab kits, which I didn't put in here, but we'll be purchasing those through BOCES, so we get our aid on that, and an additional mentor-mentee collaborative meeting. The total cost under that division is $7,625. Athletics, we anticipate about a $1,000 increase to the cost of officials, a new huddle camera for boys and girls hockey, also some ice rental increase. I think we budgeted $2,000. The rifle team, which our salutatorian is a member, they need new rifles, and we're looking at, I believe, adding 2 new rifles to that. And again, really happy to talk about girls wrestling, a very successful year this year, and looking to continue to grow that. Athletics will go up by $15,075. Real important on transportation, we are asking to purchase 4 diesel-powered buses at a total cost of $757,638.
Quick question. What is a huddle camera?
That's just the name of the company that we use. It's basically a rotating camera that can follow the action on the ice.
Wide angle.
Got it. Okay.
So people can watch from home.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Under the request for facilities, he asked for 3 scrubbers. The floor scrubbers at the elementary schools are getting to the point of being beyond life expectancy, so we settled on 1, and we'll have 1 for a spare for the other 2 buildings. We'll add that in over the next couple of years to get that done. And supplies, $113,000. That looks like a really high number. This is not actually new money, but we've been purchasing toilet paper, tissue paper, cleaners, garbage bags through forward spending. That's not a real great way to budget for facilities if we don't have forward spending money. Basically money that at this time of the year would be available. I would like to get that in the budget. That's where it belongs. We'll always still be a year ahead because we're doing forward spending right now to buy those supplies, but then he'll be able to buy them next year. Again, always being a year ahead. But it needs to really be part of the budget, especially as we get down to the tough times. And we talked about this at least at the last meeting, budgeting for a second school resource officer at $150,000. We are asking again within this budget to have a $100,000 capital outlay. Again, this is aidable at approximately 90%. It's our building aid. And what we're looking at doing next year is to start tackling some of the asbestos-containing floor tiles at J.W. Leary. And this very well may be a multi-year project. It all really depends on how the quotes come in if this gets approved. On the next slide, just to recap, the budget of $78,015,406. That is the only proposition. The contingency budget, if the vote fails, the contingency budget would show a savings of $1.629 million. And what that does is it eliminates the purchase of almost all equipment, the buses, and the capital outlay. And finally, just a reminder, our budget is scheduled for May 7th at 6:30 p.m. I'm sorry, May 19th from noon to 8 at the community center. And we do have, as you saw, we drew the names of the order of the ballots, 3 candidates for 2 positions. Any questions on the budget? And I would really like to thank the Finance Committee. They put a lot of hard work into this. Okay, that's everything I have on the budget. The next item is a request to dispose of last year's ballots. It does require board authorization. We have a retroactive bus request. It's really an amendment. PAL was unable to take the trip that we had already authorized because we shut down early that day. So this is just to authorize their new date, which again has already taken place. The Louisville Summer Recreation Program is requesting again utilization of 2 of our buses. They pay for the drivers, they pay for the cost of the fuel, plus they also pay $10 per day per bus over and above. And finally, requesting that the board accept a $500 donation from Northern Credit to Jefferson Elementary for this, to support the 6th grade field trip.
Okay, thank you very much, Ron. Appreciate that. Right now, if there is a desire among any board members to hold an executive session to discuss any personnel actions that we may be taking action on later in the meeting, or for any other reason, now would be the time to request a motion for that. If not, we can just continue with the open meeting and not have an executive session this evening. Or we can do it at the end of the meeting if you prefer.
No, but I know, no, yes, I did. She is certified, yes. Yes, sorry, she is. I was thinking it was a different question, sorry.
Is there a request for an executive session from any board member?
Yep, I'd like to make a motion for executive session.
Okay, we have a motion.
Can I ask a question? Is it for items that we're going to be acting upon in coming up in the agenda? Is it for other items? Because if it's for other items, I'd prefer we wait till the end to let everybody else get out of here. Because there's really no action coming off of it, correct?
Yeah, I'm good for the end.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so continue with open session. Is that what I'm, for now? Is that what I'm hearing? All right, in that case, we will move on to recommended actions. And first is the consent agenda. I have any request for any of the consent agenda items to be moved out of the consent agenda and into the items for individual action? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda
So moved.
items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Moving on now to other items for action. First up is the approval of the BOCES administrative budget for 26-27.
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Next is the appointment and approval of the BOCES board candidate slate for 26-27.
So moved.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Next is a resolution to approve the Massena Central School District budget for 26-27.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the budget. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the budget? Okay, any opposed? Very good. Next is the approval of the Massena Central School District Property Tax Report Card for 26-27. Okay, motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, that carries. Next is the resolution to dispose of ballots. Did I skip one? Oh, excuse me. My apologies. I did skip one. Next is the approval of the 26-27 Board of Education meeting schedule. Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Now the resolution to dispose of the ballots.
So moved.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Next is the approval of a bus utilization request from PAL.
So moved.
Any questions? All in favor? Okay. Approval of the Louisville Summer Rec Program bus request.
So moved.
Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor? All right. And next is the approval of an MOA with the Massena Federation of Teachers.
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? All right. Next is a resolution number 1, we'll call it, for an administrative leave.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I do have one comment. I was just wondering with this resolution, just as a one-off and not a normal situation, if we could add subject to further board action.
Say that again?
So where it says authorizes the superintendent to return the employee to active employment at the superintendent's discretion, if we could add subject to further board action.
At the end. Those 5 words at the end.
Does that violate your ability to manage the district?
I don't think so. I think we'd be fine.
This would be a one-off. I just want to be very clear.
For
It
this
shouldn't- it wouldn't be a
resolution
standard-
only?
Yeah,
You're
it
not
wouldn't be a
saying going
standard
forward?
resolution going forward, yeah.
I see.
Yep.
Okay.
So you're not talking about for this one, but for anything else in the future?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I would just run that language probably by the attorney, but I don't see that being a
Okay.
problem.
Perfect.
Implying our decision would supersede Ron's.
Subject to further board action.
I mean, you'd have to
Would-
vote on it?
Yes,
But then if we disagree,
it would still be a recommendation by the superintendent,
Mike's,
just as
please.
appointment, but.
Mike's, if you're going to make comments.
What do I have?
I'm sorry, I was saying, does that, our voice supersedes the superintendent's in that case? Is that what we're saying?
I believe it would be, yeah.
I think,
It'd still be at recommendation, so just as appointments are now.
so sometimes they're appointed and they start, and then we approve it retroactively. So in this instance, you'd say we'd have to wait until we actually had a meeting where we agreed with that recommendation.
Yes.
Before that person could come back to work.
Yes.
So we require the superintendent to act with the board. Not go the opposite way. Make sure that the board is on board.
I don't know that, I don't know that we need to, I feel like we'd be micromanaging Mr. Burke if we did
Yeah,
that.
and I
The
don't,
way- the way
I don't
understand it.
disagree. I just think that this is a governance in this case. A governance.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I just don't, I mean, ask the attorney, I don't know if, but I don't know that we need that language.
It's already retroactive now.
But I think what you're asking, Zach, is not so much the placement of somebody on leave, but the return
The
from
return,
leave.
correct, yeah.
Honestly, I don't think that does anything to my office. If there was something that said, okay, we need to return somebody sooner than later, we could always call for a special board meeting to get that done sooner than later. Yeah.
That would be better, rather than waiting.
Okay,
Yep.
so let me be clear.
Mike, please.
So what you're asking for is that the resolution that's put before us be amended, and then we vote on it?
Correct. Only for the return, the placement
Is
remains
that
the same.
I know, but is that parliamentary procedure? Like, can you, we're having a discussion right now, right?
Yeah.
We're discussing. Because you would have to make that motion, and you would have to get a second.
This motion would have to be rescinded first, the one that's on the
Okay,
table now.
so this would have to be rescinded, then a new
Then-
motion would have to be made and get seconded for us to vote on it. So what if,
Yes.
to rescind this one, what if it dies? What if not enough people are interested
Then we would be forced to vote on this
to vote
particular
on it?
motion.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to be clear what
Yeah.
our procedure was.
Mr. Monroe, were you asking for this motion or for future motions?
Just for this resolution.
Just this one?
Not all
Oh,
future
okay, okay.
resolutions, yeah, no, just.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought you
Yeah,
were
correct.
getting
This is
at.
just a one-off request in the language of this specific resolution.
Okay.
In the place, in the only amendment I'm requesting is in the return, and not on placement.
And this is for resolution number 1 only.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I put a motion to rescind what we just proposed?
Yes, that's what we would need to do. And then
Can I have a
theoretically,
second?
it would need a second, and then Zach could offer a motion to add additional language.
Can I have a second?
Second.
I would, let's start over, please. I would like to request a motion to table this resolution number 1 as written.
So move.
Second.
There's a second, okay. And all in favor of tabling this motion? Okay, any opposed? Okay. I think we have a, did you get that? Okay.
So now,
So now, Mr. Monroe.
Yep, so I'd like to propose an amendment to resolution
one,
number 1, administrative leave. Whereas the language in the superintendent to return the employee to active employment at the superintendent's discretion, where it is placed as the superintendent's discretion be as with board action. Subject to further board action.
Subject to
Correct.
board approval.
So, yes,
Is that acceptable language to you?
that's acceptable. Yes.
Can you
Kind of
repeat that?
takes away the fact that we're leaving up to superintendent's discretion, and then we're saying with board approval. That's two opposite things. I mean, it doesn't
It's
make
the
sense.
superintendent's recommendation, really, with board, not discretion. It's a then we'd view it exactly like every motion that we vote on. He recommends it, and we choose if we agree with it or not.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that's what I'm thinking it is, but, so I think the discretion has to be changed as well. That's the point.
I would like to hear the resolution that you're proposing.
I would too.
Read exactly how you are proposing it, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Give me a minute. So the superintendent to return the employee to active employment, subject to further board approval.
So are you saying that the super?
Andrew, I'm sorry, this is not something for you to be involved in. My apologies, but that's really the way it is.
One more time, Zach.
So in that last sentence, after March 27, 2026, so say, and authorizes the superintendent to return the employee to active employment, subject to further board approval.
Subject to what board approval?
Just board.
Further board approval.
Further board approval. Further board approval. That'll work.
I think the word further is not necessary.
Subject, yeah, you can eliminate that if you, subject to board approval.
Subject to board approval.
Zach, could you read it one more time after the March 27 thing?
And authorizes the superintendent to return the employee to active employment, further to board approval.
Pending further, okay, all right.
Are we clear?
I guess so.
So is that's your motion? Do I have a second?
That's the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments?
So we would have to convene as a board with a quorum and vote with a majority to return someone to active duty.
To return the subject of this resolution to active employment.
Right, that's someone
Yeah.
to active duty who is currently on paid administrative leave. Is that correct?
I believe that is what we're
That's correct.
voting on. Yes.
Okay. We've had a special board meeting, and we did have a quorum, and we did conduct our business. And there were some people who were not happy about not being able to participate in that because of timing. Some people were out of town, some people had prior commitments. So are we all in agreement that it doesn't matter which 5 of us are in attendance, that the rest of us are going to then acquiesce our vote to the 5 who are available?
That's the legal requirement.
Yep.
I know that, but I just want to make sure that everyone on the board understands that that's what that means. It means whatever 5 are available, if there are only 5, whatever decision that they make, the rest of the board is going to be not vocally against that decision. They're going to be okay with it.
That would have to be the case with any meeting.
Right.
Meeting, yeah.
Right? There are times when people can't be available. It is what it is. Life gets in the way. So that's the way it is. If there's a quorum, there's a meeting. Whatever happens, happens.
Just
Absolutely.
as long as
And-
there's not going to be a pay cut when I miss a meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments on this particular resolution as amended? All in favor? Any opposed? Did you get that, Ashley? Could we just see another show of hands for those in approval? And those against? Are there any abstentions?
I think that was everyone.
Okay. Moving on to resolution number 2 for a paid administrative leave.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments here? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. For approval of personnel actions, we'll turn it over to Mr. Burke.
I recommend approval of action items listed as 1 through 21.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh,
I
sorry.
did have a question about number 1.
That's confirmed.
And let me just postulate this, if I can do it so that it remains anonymous. If number 1 is found to be inaccurate, then there would be no action taken on that. Is that correct?
Yes, number 1 is predicated on a certification having been obtained on January 30th.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on the items number 1 through 21? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Burke.
And I also recommend approval of items 22 through 25.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And that is the end of our business on our agenda for tonight. Are there any items for a future agenda that board members would like to propose?
I would like to comment that the moving of executive session to later in the board meeting, I actually really like. Because
He likes the moving executive session to later in the board meeting.
I'm wondering where we are with the senior pre-graduation items and also with the Life Track survey.
So Mr. Oliver has finalized his committee, and he'll be getting to us, I think, any day with requests. Yep, he's nodding his head for that initial meeting.
Okay.
Yep. And the Life Track survey is, I believe, closed. I'll have to go back and look exactly what our numbers were, but I think we were somewhere in the 80 plus 80%, maybe close. Let me look at the numbers. I'm not sure exactly how we ended.
Okay.
Any other items of new business?
Yes. A few weeks ago, many weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, I asked if it would be a simple solution to move grade 6 to junior high and move grade 8 to high school to make some room in elementary school, where we have more room in high school. Would it be an easy fix for our space we have?
So we actually just talked about this at our last admin meeting. It was a conversation that came up as a result of a study that was done a number of years ago about moving grades 7 and 8 to the senior high. And given that it came up at the admin table, it's something that I think we need to consider. It's a pretty big lift to do things of that nature. And then there's a lot of philosophical commentary about, do you want junior high students with upper level high school? Not that they don't necessarily do that in some of the smaller districts.
But I was not talking about moving 7th grade to the high school, just moving 8 to the high school and 6 to the junior.
If you move just 8th grade, that would be something we could take a look at as well, and that might be more doable. The only problem when you start talking about grade 6 and 7, they're different certifications. So teachers certify grade 7 through 12 typically in the core content areas, and it's 2-6 or B2, B6, birth through 6. So the certifications are different. So could we house grade 6 and 7 in the same building? Physically, yes, but share the same teachers, no, other than music, phys ed, the art specials, the art.
So it might be a good option.
It could be.
So
It could be.
we'll look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things will be on the table. I like the bold thinking.
Anyone else with items for a future agenda? One more shot. Any desire for an executive session following our adjournment?
Yes, motion for executive session.
Okay, and can you tell me what your reasoning is? I don't expect you to be able to quote the legal verbiage.
Personnel.
Okay, so I believe that we would be going into executive session to discuss items leading to the appointment, employment, suspension, resignation, discipline of particular persons?
Correct.
Okay. Then we will not adjourn here. We have a motion for an executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
We're not going to reconvene. We're not going to vote on anything.
We will not be voting, but we will be reconvening to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Very good. We will reconvene to adjourn at the close of executive session. There will be no action taken. We'll adjourn.